I was thinking about the time that I got laid off. So I got laid off right around Labor Day in 2020. It was a COVID layoff where the company was doing huge layoffs, just department by department. I'm one of those people who I'm very optimistic, almost to a fault. And I never, ever think that I have a problem or that there's a problem coming my way, usually until it blows up in my face. And that can be kind of a good thing because it lets you focus if other people around you are worried. But it also means that sometimes you do have a problem and you're kind of the last to realize. And this is one of those times. So in 2020, the pandemic hit the company that I was working for pretty hard. And so they started doing mass layoffs. They were cutting like big parts of the company and all throughout the company, like no one department or group. It was just happening everywhere. And so that obviously put a lot of people on guard and on alert, and it made it tough for them to focus. But I, in a million years, never thought it would happen to me. It didn't matter how many layoffs there were. It didn't matter how many people it affected. I just thought, like, that's too bad for those people, but clearly they must have had some problem or they were in just some kind of job that was a nice to have to begin with. So that stuff doesn't apply to me, so I'm going to be fine. And like I said, it helped me just focus on my work and not worry about it until the very day that it happened. But hindsight's always 2020. But I think if I'd been paying closer attention, I probably could have seen it coming. And part of the reason, too, why I didn't think it would happen to me was because there were a few rounds of layoffs. So in addition to my inherent bias that problems aren't going to be a problem for me personally, I also thought, well, there's been, I don't know what it was, 3 or 4 rounds. There's been 3 or 4 rounds of layoffs. So if it was going to happen, it obviously would have happened by now. And it hasn't, so it won't happen. But that ended up being a bad assumption because really what it was they were going department by department and they just hadn't got to my department yet. And so I was on the first day of a vacation and my phone rang in the morning and I looked down and it was my boss's boss. And I was like, whoa, this is not good. Like, why would my boss's boss be calling me while I'm on break? This is definitely like, oh, I think I know what this is about. So I picked up and I said, what's up? And my boss's boss is a cool guy, still his friend to this day. We talk. He's no longer there either. And you could sort of tell that he was reading from a script. He didn't really want to do it. Like, this is just as hard for me as it is for you. He didn't actually say that, but I kind of picked that up a little bit. He was like, yeah, so we're like going through all these things and the layoffs. And so you're affected. And so blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And blah, blah, blah. And so this is what you get. And this is the thing. And he's like, yeah, just, you can hold on to the laptop. Like, it's no big deal. But yeah, your position's eliminated. So really sorry about that. And like, these are like the aspects. So the crazy thing was I had never had a break of an undefined time until then, because obviously, like growing up during school, you have summer break. And then when you're working, you take like a week off or you take 2 weeks off to go on a vacation. Every break I'd ever had in my life had a set start and end date. So now in my late 20s, this is the first time I've ever been just like done with what I was doing with no plan or fallback option. And the break would be as long or as short as I made it. And that was really interesting because I didn't know if I would kind of thrive with that or if it would be super daunting and a lot of pressure. Everybody wants what they don't have. So you obviously have this idea when you're in school or when you're working that, oh, I wish I could just like do whatever I wanted all day. I wish I could just quit my job. That seems great on the face of it. But then there's this other idea that, well, a job isn't just a way to make money and something to fill up your schedule. A job like gives meaning and purpose to your life. And even if you somehow had $1 billion and you didn't have to work, you probably still do something because people aren't made to just sit around watching TV. It's too much of a good thing. So because I never had an experience like that, I didn't know whether getting laid off would be like the most amazing thing ever, or I would be kind of restless and looking for something to do. The very day that I got the news, I was definitely sad about it. And I think the reason I was sad was because you always feel, at least for me, you always want to feel like you've left something or finished on your own terms. And that was not my own terms. That was just like, oh, hey, you don't have a job anymore, bye. And they didn't say I did anything wrong. They were just like, oh, the company's needs have changed, so whatever. They weren't trying to make me feel bad about it. But I did feel a little bit bad about it because I liked my job. So if it were up to me, I would have continued doing it at least for a little while. So for something to end or go away or be taken from you prematurely before you wanted it to end, something about not being fully in control of that was saddening, kind of. So for the first day or 24 hours, I was kind of sad about it. But then I woke up the next day and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I immediately went past sadness and to that idea of like what I said a minute ago. I could do whatever I want. I could watch TV all day. I could go visit my friends. I could do this. I could do that. I could do that. And I have to say that that's pretty much how I felt the entire time I was laid off. This was happening also in pre-vaccine coronavirus. So businesses were pretty closed. So I was like, this seems like it's going to be amazing. But will it be that amazing? Especially because it's getting cold out. Businesses are closed. Is this going to kind of suck because I can't go anywhere? But it didn't suck. It was just like, oh, this is amazing. I can just do whatever I want now. Like, I love being laid off. And a couple things happened. First is I feel like I got my time back. My job, I liked my job a lot, but it was pretty busy. So I would like wake up and I'd work and work and work. And I'm like, oh my God, it's lunchtime. And I'd eat lunch and I'd work and work and work. And I'd be like, oh my God, it's like 5 or 6 o'clock. Like, what? Like, just the days felt like they were flying by because they keep you busy. But then when I was laid off, I was like, I could just wake up whenever I want. I send a couple emails. I could go play tennis. I'll like eat a lunch and like relax and like, oh, it's still only 1:30. Like, wow. And then like I just felt like I completely had my time back and a day felt like a normal day again. But then the other thing I realized was that this is just me speaking, but personally, I have a feeling that sometimes you hear adults, like old people after they retire, either dread retiring or they do retire and they just don't know what to do with their time. And I didn't feel that way at all. My guess is the reason for that is because a lot of people let their job or their career spoon feed them their goals. And for me, I was like, okay, I'm laid off, so I don't have to do what my job is telling me to do. But as long as I just make up my own goals, I'm never going to feel like super bored or not know what to do. And so I did that. And it also let me kind of stop and think about what I wanted to do with my job going forward. And the long story short is I ended up just getting a job that was similar to my last one. One way that I kind of think through that, anytime anyone asks me, like, what should I do, is I say, like, imagine one world where you had $1 million billion, like way more than money than you could ever conceivably spend. So you're allowed to do whatever you want. What would you do? And then on the other hand, imagine if you were living in Majora's Mask and the moon was crashing into the earth tomorrow and you knew you only had one night to live left on this planet before everybody died. What would you do? So I think the answer to those two, somewhere in the middle of the answer of those two extremes, is what you should kind of be doing or on your way to doing in your day-to-day life. As long as you have some combination of learning, having fun, and helping other people, that's a pretty good job, and the small things will kind of take care of themselves. I ended up being out of work for like 4.5 months, and totally coincidentally, it almost aligned perfectly with the length of the NFL season. So like I was one NFL season's worth of unemployed, but somebody I knew from that last job helped get me a new job. I'm forever going to be grateful to him. And so everything kind of worked itself out in that way. But I also was getting and mostly failing interviews. So I knew that with enough time, something would have hit. So I never was really truly worried. But that was like another thing, was I was pretty consistently finding interviews and just not getting any of them. That was definitely a humbling moment because for whatever reason, I just thought it would be super easy to find a new job. Like, oh, I know stuff. Oh, I have this experience. Companies are just going to want me. And I'm guessing part of it was that I'm sure I messed up interviews in ways that I didn't even know, but I'd get told no. And it wasn't even that I got told no because you can't expect to get everything, even though I kind of did. But I would get told no, like right off the bat. Usually the first interview with a company, they're just sort of like, they ask you super simple questions just to sort of get a feel for you and see if you'd work with the team. So it'll be like, hey, what's your name? Who are you? Why are you interested in this job? And do you have any questions for us? And I would fail that too. And I was like, what? Did I like, huh? Like, how could I possibly, what? Like, how could I possibly have answered that? Well, so it was less about being told no and more about the times when I got told no extremely early in the process. That really surprised me. I didn't really end up doing anything crazy or start any like major new hobbies during the time that I was laid off. It was more just the idea that I could do whatever I want when I wanted. And again, maybe I was overly optimistic, but I felt like I would just get a job at some point as long as I didn't have to like go crazy, but as long as I looked for an hour or two every day, I would just sort of get a job at some point, and that's what ended up happening. So I never really felt like pressure or like reality was setting in or anything like that. I knew in the back of my mind that as much as I liked being laid off, it was unsustainable and I would need to have a job again at some point. But the fact that it only took 4-ish months made it so that I didn't feel like it was getting weird or like taking too long or anything. Anyway, to anyone out there who's ever gotten laid off, I feel for you. You'll pull through it. Try to make the best of it. I know that it's kind of easy for me to say because like I wasn't married at the time. I don't have kids or like that much of responsibilities. So I know for different people, having something like that happen can be like a much bigger upheaval than it was for me personally. But as with anything else in life, just try to make the best of it and know that everything's going to be okay. I think the biggest thing really was that I used to read a lot growing up and I somehow fell off that. I think like something about going to work made me want to like melt into a puddle on the couch as much as humanly possible from the time I got home up until going to sleep. So I just kind of fell off reading. And the one thing I would say that getting laid off during the pandemic did was really get me back into reading again. And that's something I still do to this day. So I don't know if it's inevitable, but definitely getting laid off helped me reconnect with the lifelong hobby of reading. And if you are one of those people who feels like they need more structure, a good way to kind of future-proof yourself is to have a very active hobby or even community service. So could it just be YouTube? Like you do your job and you have your YouTube, whether or not anybody's watching or you're making money out of it, it doesn't really matter as long as you enjoy doing it and it's something you have a passion for. So then, okay, let's say you get laid off. Whether it's whether it's your fault or whether it was totally outside your control, you lose your job. Okay, well, no need to panic because I have my YouTube or insert hobby here, and you can just do that for purpose until you find a job again. But yeah, find some stuff to do. Think about this is a perfect chance to hit reset on a lot of routines that you're in or stuff that you're doing. Just ask yourself, do I still need to be doing this? Does this make sense anymore? Am I getting the same joy or the same benefit out of this hobby or this thing that I work on or this relationship that I have? Is this still worth it? Getting laid off gives you a lot of time to think about that stuff and sort of hitting reset on various parts of your life. But anyway, like I said, what would you do if you had unlimited money? What would you do if the world was about to end? Somewhere in the middle is probably a pretty good path forward. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all soon.